He was just a teenager on his way to a long-awaited trip, carrying nothing but excitement and the innocent pride of sitting beside his father. To him, the wide leather seats and soft lighting of first class weren't symbols of status. They were a chance to feel special, to feel equal. But to some, he was something else entirely. Too young, too black, too out of place. The stares came first, then the whispers, and then the moment that would turn his joy into humiliation. Stripped of dignity in front of strangers, judged before he ever had the chance to speak. But what happened after? That's where the story takes a turn no one on that flight could have expected. And it's a turn that reveals more about us than we'd like to admit. Are you ready to hear what unfolded? Stay with me and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, because this story demands to be told. Malik Thompson was 17, a bright kid with a love for numbers and a dream of studying business like his father. He had never flown first class before. This trip wasn't just about traveling. It was about stepping into a world he'd only seen from the distance of the economy cabin. As he followed his father down the jet bridge that morning, his chest swelled with excitement. The air smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant, but to Malik, it smelled like opportunity. Anthony Thompson, his father, was more than just a successful CEO. He was Malik's role model. Calm, composed, and commanding respect without even trying. For years, Malik had watched him navigate boardrooms with ease. Still, today, for the first time, Malik would share in a different kind of privilege, sitting beside his father at the very front of the plane. Passengers filtered in behind them, most glancing without thought, but some with lingering looks that made Malik shift uncomfortably in his seat. The flight attendant smiled tightly as she checked their tickets, but Malik caught the flicker in her eyes. That fleeting doubt, the kind that questioned silently, "Do they really belong here?" He brushed it off, trying to soak in the soft cushions and glossy magazines tucked into the seat pockets. But beneath the thrill, a knot formed in his stomach. Because Malik knew, even before the seatbelt signs lit up, that joy like his rarely lasted unchallenged. It wasn't paranoia, it was experience. A lifetime of small slights, suspicious glances, and moments when his skin spoke louder than his voice. He tried to push the thought aside, but deep down, a shadow lingered. Something was coming. He didn't know what. The first signs of trouble were subtle. A passenger across the aisle adjusted his cufflinks, watching Malik a little too long, lips pressed tight. Another leaned toward the attendant, whispering something behind a cupped hand. Malik felt the heat of their stares without needing to meet their eyes. He shifted in his seat, straightened his posture, did everything he'd been taught to appear calm, non-threatening, respectable. But it didn't matter. Respectability was never enough. Then it happened. The lead flight attendant stopped beside him, her smile rehearsed but brittle. "Excuse me, young man," she began, her voice polite but edged with accusation. "I think you're in the wrong seat." Malik's heart skipped. He fumbled for his ticket, hands trembling as he held it up. She didn't glance at it. Instead, her eyes flicked toward Anthony as though silently asking for confirmation. The unspoken message cut deeper than words. Prove you belong. Passengers turned in their seats, curious now, some smirking, others pulling out their phones. Malik felt every second stretch like an eternity. The attendant pressed again, firmer this time. "This section is reserved. You need to move." Heat rose in his chest. His cheeks burned. He could feel the weight of their judgment, the humiliation of being challenged not because of a mistake, but because of who he was. His voice caught in his throat. He wanted to protest, but fear paralyzed him. What if arguing made it worse? What if his dignity was the price for avoiding escalation? Anthony's hand tightened on the armrest. His silence was heavy, deliberate, the kind that carried both warning and calculation. Malik's heart pounded as the attendants leaned closer, their insistence growing sharper. The words weren't shouted, but the message was loud enough for the cabin to hear. "You don't belong here." And as Malik sat frozen, shame washing over him, the phones kept recording. Every angle captured, every cruel second preserved. The question echoed in his mind. How much more could he endure before something snapped? The air thickened as Anthony finally rose. His calm demeanor cracked, revealing a storm Malik had only glimpsed in rare moments. His voice, deep and unwavering, cut through the cabin like thunder. "This is my son. He belongs here as much as I do." Gasps rippled through the rows. The attendants stiffened, caught off guard by the authority in his tone. Some passengers lowered their phones, others kept recording, sensing the moment had shifted. But the humiliation had already peaked. Malik felt tears sting at the corners of his eyes, quickly blinked them away. He wasn't just embarrassed, he was shattered. To be dragged into the spotlight like a criminal when all he'd done was sit where his ticket allowed. His pulse thundered in his ears. This wasn't just discomfort. It was exposure, the raw unveiling of a wound society kept insisting didn't exist. The lead attendant hesitated, but Anthony didn't waver. His presence filled the space, not just as a father defending his child, but as a man refusing to let another line of injustice go unchecked. Silence fell across the cabin. The man in cufflinks looked away, suddenly fascinated by his watch. The murmurs died. The only sound was the steady hum of the engines, straining beneath the weight of tension, and in that moment, Malik realized this was more than a seat dispute. This was a battle for dignity, fought in the open, where every witness had to choose, complicity or courage. The climax wasn't just his humiliation, it was his father's stand, the collision of two truths, their belonging versus the world's denial. Would it be enough to break the cycle, or just another story lost to silence? The cabin never felt so heavy. Eyes darted from Malik to Anthony to the trembling attendants who suddenly seemed smaller, their authority unraveling. No one dared speak. And in that silence, something shifted. The lead attendant cleared her throat, voice unsteady. "Sir, please." "Take your seats." The words were thin, almost swallowed by the air, but they carried the weight of surrender. Anthony guided Malik back into the first-class seat, the same seat he'd been thrown out of minutes earlier. Malik sat down slowly, his heart pounding. For the first time, the other passengers weren't looking at him like an intruder. They were watching him as though they had just seen a truth they could never unsee. The man in the tailored suit avoided his gaze. His earlier arrogance collapsed into silence. Phones stayed raised, recording, capturing every second. The damage had already been done, but now the evidence was undeniable. The flight continued, but for Malik, nothing felt the same. He stared out the window, the sky stretching endlessly before him, yet the weight on his chest remained. His father sat beside him, quiet now, but Malik could feel the storm still burning beneath his calm exterior. There was pride in that moment. Anthony had defended him with unshakable strength, but there was also pain, because they both knew this wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. When the plane finally landed, Malik walked through the terminal with his head higher than before. Still, the sting of humiliation clung to him. The videos had already begun spreading online, people whispering, headlines forming. His name, his face, his story would now live far beyond the walls of that plane. And while that thought filled him with unease, it also carried a spark of power. This was no longer just about a boy kicked out of first class. It was about every moment someone was told, silently or directly, that they didn't belong. It was about every time a child's innocence collided with prejudice. It was about the quiet violence of humiliation, the unspoken rules that drew invisible lines between who is seen as worthy and who is not. For Malik, the lesson was seared deep. Dignity could be stripped in seconds. But truth, once revealed, could not be buried again. His father's voice, echoing through the cabin, became more than a defense. It became a declaration that silence was no longer an option. And yet the bigger question lingered, heavy and unyielding. How many more Maliks would there be before the world decided enough was enough? How many fathers would have to fight? How many children would carry scars of shame that should never have been theirs? This was not just a story about one flight, one family, or one confrontation. It was a mirror, held up to a society still unwilling to see itself clearly. A mirror that demands we ask, will we keep looking away, or will we finally face the truth staring back at us? Because in the end, Malik's humiliation wasn't his alone. It was ours. His father's defiance wasn't his alone. It was a call to all of us. To listen, to act, to refuse the lie that some belong and others do not.